Hello again, everybody. This is Spider Fighter. Comag. One of the things that Comag shows you in his video series is how to create a simple receptor puzzle. So in other words, what happens is the player somehow triggers a spawner that launches a blob. The blob hits the receptor opens the door, or spawns something else, a monster, whatever, or a pit trap, or whatever you want to do. It's very, very versatile puzzle. But we're going to flip that a little bit. I needed a puzzle that showed me how to open the door if the player blocked the shot, blocked the blob. In other words, if that blob never hits the receptor, then the door will open. If the blob hits the receptor, then nothing happens. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So you'll see that I've opened up the editor, created a new map, and this is what you typically get when you it's what you absolutely get every time you open the editor. We're going to make this room a little bit bigger, left-clicking to open up our room, right-clicking to take away. Since it's a little bigger, we're going to move this over. I am copying. See what I did there? I pressed Control C to copy that torch. Now I'm going to paste it with Control V, and then I can move that torch around, just like you learned in Comag's videos, which hopefully you've seen. Now obviously we're going to need a spawner, and we're going to need something that makes it look like that spawner is actually coming from. So we'll throw a demon head up there. We'll throw the spawner up there as well. The tail shows you which direction it's going to go. We want a receptor on the opposite wall, and we're actually going to need a door that opens up, so I'm going to throw that in right now. We'll do a little portcullis, and we'll put that up, and let's see what we have here. Okay, so there we go. There's our setup. Okay, now normally what would happen is, well, actually we need one more thing, don't we? We need to be able to trigger that spawner. So to make it easier, Comag already showed you how to set one up with a simple, I think it was a wall button that he used. So we're going to use a pressure plate just so you can see how that works. So normally what we do is we would step on that plate. That would trigger the blob would hit the receptor would hit the door. We want to stop that from happening, so of course we're going to need to spawn an entity. We're going to make that a blob. So now that you know what would normally happen, we're going to twist that a little bit. In order to make this work, we need a counter. We also need a timer. And I apologize for my crappy microphone. I've played with this for about a half an hour. This is the best sound that I can get out of this. So sorry about that. So we are going to attach this pressure plate to the timer. And then we also need to set it to the spawner. Okay, this is going to, when the player steps in the plate, it's going to spawn the blob. It's going to start the timer. Now that we've done that, we want the counter. We need to connect that to the door, and we're going to give that a value of 1. Now all that's left is to set up our timer. We want to add the connector, connect the timer to the counter, and what we're going to do is we're going to decrement. Okay, so in other words, when the player steps on this pressure plate, it hits the timer, activates the timer. The timer activates the counter by decrementing it by 1. Okay, then that counter, once it hits 0, will open the portcullis. The other thing we want to do, and it's good practice to do this anyway, is to find a way to deactivate, to shut off your timers. Otherwise you wind up, especially in particularly large mods, you're going to wind up with timers running all over the place, and that kind of eats up your CPU cycle. So I connected it to itself and then deactivated it, and that's it. We'll move our player start over here by hitting Y, and let's see how it works. Open it up. There's our portcullis right there. There's our, can't see the spawner, of course, in front of that. There we go. Okay. Now, what happened here was, and I did this just to kind of show you. If you'll notice, I'll do it one more time. If you notice, what happens is before the blob actually hits the receptor, the door opens. You hear that? That's because we set our timer, we left our timer set for 1. And clearly the blob takes a little longer than 1 second to get across the room. So we're going to change that to 2, and now everything should work fine. Hits the receptor, the door opens. But we don't want that to happen. So what we need to do is make sure that when the timer, when the receptor reaches the blob, the receptor actually has to reset everything so that it doesn't activate that door. So what we're going to do is we're going to connect the receptor to the counter, and we're going to, whoops, there we go, to the counter, and we're going to have it reset that counter. So when this blob hits, boom, the counter resets instead of opening that door. And we're also going to set it to the timer and deactivate the timer. Otherwise, that timer is going to keep running, keep counting down, and it's going to open up the door anyway. So now let's see how we did. Oops. There. And nothing happens. Goes in the receptor, nothing happens. This time we're going to catch it. Try this again. There. And the door opens. So you've got your spawner. Like this. So you've got your spawner with your blob, your receptor which connects to your counter to reset it, and your timer to deactivate it, your counter with an initial value of 1, that's connected to your door, your pressure plate, which is connected to your timer to activate it, and your spawner to activate it, and then your timer, which is set for longer than it takes the blob to reach across the room, and it's also connected to your counter to decrement it, and then back to itself to deactivate. And that's it. It's not really all that complicated. Hope that helps, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.